The body hit the pavement with a sickening crack that echoed through the Seoul night. Sarah stared at her laptop screen in horror, watching through hacked security cameras as police swarmed the Peninsula Hotel, as a black body bag was wheeled out, as Yuna was led away in handcuffs with blood on her silk robe. Her brother. She had killed her own brother. And Mi-sun had orchestrated the entire thing. But to understand how it came to this, how a lunch meeting spiraled into murder, we need to go back 12 hours earlier, to the moment everything began to unravel. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. If this is your first time watching this series, be sure to check out my channel for parts 1 to 5. Welcome to part 6. You're about to be surprised by what happens next. The collision happened so fast that Sarah barely registered it until she felt strong hands steadying her shoulders. She had been walking out of the Azure Room restaurant, her mind spinning with the poisonous revelations Yuna had planted, her vision blurred by tears she refused to let fall in public. She wasn't watching where she was going, wasn't paying attention to anything except the screaming voice in her head that kept replaying those photos over and over again. Mi-sun and Yuna. Together. Intimate. 6 months ago. Sarah? Mi-sun's voice cut through her spiral of thoughts like a knife. What are you doing here? I thought you'd still be at lunch. Sarah's heart lurched painfully in her chest. Of all the people to run into at this exact moment, it had to be him. The man she loved. The man who might have been lying to her for months. She looked up into his face, seeing the concern etched in his features, the way his hands still gripped her arms as if afraid she might collapse. And maybe she would have, if not for the survival instincts that had kept her alive through so many difficult years. She forced a smile onto her face, pulling from reserves of strength she didn't know she still possessed. The smile felt like broken glass in her mouth, sharp and painful, but she held it there. It just finished. Yuna is absolutely wonderful, Mi-sun. You never told me how fascinating she is. Mi-sun's eyes searched her face, and Sarah could see the wheels turning behind his gaze. He knew something was wrong. After months of marriage, of learning each other's tells and habits, he could read her too well. But she couldn't let him see the truth. Not yet. Not until she understood what was really happening. How is it, he asked, his voice careful, controlled. What did you two talk about? Sarah launched into an elaborate fabrication, her words flowing smoothly despite the chaos in her mind. Oh, mostly business strategies. She has incredible insights into international markets. We discussed government connections, particularly her relationships with officials in China and Japan. She thinks there might be opportunities for Kang Corporation to expand our manufacturing partnerships in the Guangdong province. Very technical stuff, really. Import regulations, tax incentives, that sort of thing. She watched Mi-sun's face as she spoke, saw the tension in his jaw ease slightly. He wanted to believe her. Needed to believe that his careful house of cards wasn't collapsing around him. She mentioned you two built the company together. Sarah continued, her hand reaching out to touch his arm in what she hoped looked like an affectionate gesture. She's very proud of what you accomplished. It must have been an exciting time, those early days. It was a long time ago, Mi-sun said, his voice tight. Did she mention anything else? The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Sarah could see the fear flickering behind his eyes, could feel the desperation in the way his fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her arms. He was terrified of what Yuna might have told her, which meant there was definitely something to tell. Nothing important, Sarah lied, her smile never wavering. Just that you were determined and brilliant even back then. I already knew that, of course. She glanced at her watch, grateful for the excuse to escape this conversation before her facade cracked. I should get back to work. We have that department meeting at 3, and I still need to review the quarterly projections.
Right.
Of course. Mi-sun released her arms slowly, reluctantly. I'll see you in the meeting then. Sarah nodded and started to walk away, but his voice stopped her. Sarah? She turned back, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I love you, he said, the words heavy with meaning she couldn't decipher. You know that, right? No matter what happens, no matter what you hear or see, remember that I love you. The declaration felt strange, almost like a warning or a goodbye. Sarah's stomach twisted with fresh anxiety, but she kept her smile in place. I love you too. I'll see you later. She walked away before he could say anything else, before the tears burning behind her eyes could finally break free. She made it to the elevator, pressed the button for her floor, and only when the doors closed and she was alone did she allow herself to lean against the wall and let out a shuddering breath. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out with trembling hands and saw a message from an unknown number. I hope our lunch was enlightening, Sarah. Remember what I told you. Mi-sun will always come back to me. It's only a matter of time. You're just a temporary distraction. Sarah deleted the message with more force than necessary and shoved the phone back into her purse. The elevator opened on her floor, and she walked to her office on autopilot, nodding at colleagues who greeted her, responding to questions she didn't really hear. Finally, she reached her office and closed the door behind her, pressing her back against it as if she could physically block out the world. The headache that had been threatening since lunch suddenly exploded behind her eyes with vicious intensity. Sarah pressed her palms against her temples, trying to breathe through the pain, but it was useless. Images kept flashing through her mind. Mi-sun and Yuna at that romantic dinner. Their heads close together. His hand near hers on the table. The date stamp. 6 months ago. Right when he had started telling her he loved her for real, when their marriage had transformed from a business arrangement into something genuine. Or had it? Had any of it been real? Was she really just a convenient wife, a solution to his family's demands, while his heart belonged to the woman in the crimson Chanel suit? Sarah moved to her desk and sank into her chair, her head spinning. She tried to focus on her computer screen, tried to open the presentation she was supposed to review for the meeting, but the words blurred together into meaningless shapes. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely control the mouse. A knock at her door made her jump. Mrs. Kang. It was Jennifer, her assistant, her voice muffled through the door. Are you okay? You look pale. Sarah wanted to scream that no, she wasn't okay, that her entire world was crumbling and she didn't know what was real anymore. Instead, she took a deep breath and called out, I'm fine, Jennifer. Just a migraine coming on. The door opened slightly, and Jennifer poked her head in, her face concerned. Do you need anything? Water? Pain medication? Should I call Mr. Kang? No. The word came out too sharply, and Sarah forced herself to moderate her tone. No, don't bother him. I just need to go home and rest. Can you let him know I'm not feeling well? Tell him it's just a migraine, nothing serious. Of course. Should I reschedule your afternoon meetings? Yes, please. Thank you, Jennifer. After her assistant left, Sarah sat motionless for several minutes, staring at nothing. Then, moving with sudden purpose, she opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small device she had purchased months ago during the situation with Ji-won and her fake pregnancy. A voice-activated recorder, barely bigger than her thumb, capable of capturing hours of audio. She had bought it thinking she might need evidence against Mi-sun's ex-girlfriend or his scheming family members. She had never imagined she would need to use it against her own husband. Sarah powered on the device, tested it quickly to make sure it was working, then slipped it into her purse. Tonight, before Mi-sun left for whatever he was planning, she would plant it in his jacket. The jacket he always wore to important meetings, the one he thought made him look distinguished and trustworthy. She would hear everything, every word, every lie. Then she would decide what to do with the truth. Sarah gathered her things and left the office, ignoring the concerned looks from her colleagues. The drive home felt endless, every red light an eternity, every mile stretching out before her like an impossible distance. When she finally pulled into the parking garage of their building, she sat in her car for a long moment, her forehead resting against the steering wheel. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just yesterday morning, she had woken up in Mi-sun's arms, feeling safe and loved. They had made breakfast together, laughing about something silly, stealing kisses between bites of toast. The world had seemed bright and full of possibility. Now everything was shadows and uncertainty. Sarah forced herself out of the car and into the elevator, riding up to their penthouse in numb silence. The apartment felt too big and too empty when she entered, echoing with all the conversations they would never have, all the truths that remained unspoken. She went straight to Mi-sun's closet, found his favorite jacket hanging exactly where he always kept it. Her hands were steady now, purpose replacing panic. She carefully tucked the recorder deep into the inner pocket, making sure it was positioned to capture sound clearly, but hidden enough that he wouldn't feel it or notice the slight added weight. Then Sarah went to her laptop and opened it, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she accessed programs she hadn't used in years. Back in Chicago, before coming to Korea, before meeting Mi-sun, she had survived by being smart, by learning skills that most people never needed. One of those skills was basic hacking, taught to her by a friend who worked in IT security and who had seen too many women become victims because they didn't know how to protect themselves or find information when they needed it. Sarah had never thought she would use those skills against her own husband. But here she was, downloading software that would allow her to access security camera systems, to track locations, to see things people thought were private. She worked methodically, testing the programs, making sure everything was functioning properly. When she was satisfied, she closed the laptop and sat in the silent apartment, waiting for Mi-sun to come home, waiting to see what he would do next, waiting to discover if the man she loved even existed, or if he had been a carefully constructed illusion all along. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah tried to rest, tried to sleep off the migraine that still pounded behind her eyes, but every time she closed them, she saw those photos. Mi-sun and Yuna, together. The way Yuna had smiled when she showed them, triumph and malice mixing in her expression. The way she had said, "He'll always come back to me." Around 4 o'clock, Sarah heard the front door open. She was in the bedroom, lying on top of the covers, and she quickly closed her eyes, pretending to be asleep. She heard Mi-sun's footsteps moving through the apartment, heard him pause outside the bedroom door. "Sarah?" His voice was soft, concerned. She didn't answer, keeping her breathing slow and even. After a moment, she heard him move away, heard the sound of his office door closing. Then, faintly, she heard his voice again, talking to someone on the phone. The words were too muffled to make out, but the tone was tense, urgent. Sarah opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. What was he planning? Who was he talking to? The questions multiplied in her mind like a virus, each one spawning 3 more, until she felt like she was drowning in uncertainty. An hour later, Mi-sun appeared in the bedroom doorway again. This time Sarah sat up, rubbing her eyes as if she had just woken up. "Hey," he said, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better. The migraine is mostly gone." She studied his face, looking for signs of guilt or deception, but his expression showed only concern and affection. "Good." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I brought you some soup from that place you like. Thought you might be hungry." The gesture was so thoughtful, so caring, that Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. How could this man, who remembered her favorite soup when she was sick, who looked at her with such tenderness, be the same man who might have been with another woman 6 months ago? The cognitive dissonance was making her feel insane. "Thank you," she managed to say. "That's sweet." Mi-sun leaned in and kissed her forehead, then her lips. The kiss was soft and lingering, and Sarah found herself responding despite everything, despite the doubts and fears screaming in her head. When he pulled back, His eyes were dark with emotion. "I have to go out tonight," he said, and Sarah's heart sank. "Late business meeting. I might not be back until after midnight. Don't wait up, okay? Get some rest." "What kind of meeting?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Just investor stuff. Boring contract negotiations." The lie came so smoothly, so easily, that Sarah wondered how many other lies she had believed without question. "Okay," she said, keeping her voice neutral. "Be safe." After he left the bedroom, Sarah sat perfectly still, listening to him move around the apartment. She heard him in his closet, heard the rustle of clothes. He was getting ready to go to her. When she heard the front door close behind him, Sarah was already moving. She grabbed her laptop, her phone, her car keys. She had maybe a 5-minute head start before he reached the parking garage. It would have to be enough. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, her heart pounding as she raced down 20 floors. By the time she burst into the parking garage, she was breathing hard, but she could see Mi-sun's car still in its spot. She ran to her own car, parked 3 spaces away, and slid into the driver's seat just as she saw him emerge from the elevator. Sarah slouched down in her seat, watching through the gap between the headrest and the door frame. Mi-sun was dressed in dark clothes, not the business casual he had claimed was appropriate for investor meetings. Dark jeans, a black jacket, and that contemplative expression he got when he was deep in thought about something serious. He got into his car and pulled out of the garage. Sarah waited until he had turned onto the street before starting her own engine and following at a safe distance. She had watched enough crime shows to know the basics of tailing someone. Stay back. Keep at least 2 cars between you. Don't make obvious moves. Seoul's evening traffic helped. The streets were clogged with cars heading home from work, creating a slow-moving river of metal and glass that made it easy to keep Mi-sun's car in sight without getting too close. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, her eyes never leaving his taillights. Where was he going? To Yuna? To some other secret meeting? Every turn he made, every street he chose, felt loaded with significance. 25 minutes later, Mi-sun's car pulled up to the Peninsula Seoul. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. One of the most exclusive hotels in the city. The kind of place where privacy was guaranteed and discretion was currency. The kind of place where married men took their mistresses. Sarah parked in the public garage across the street, her mind racing. She couldn't follow him inside without being seen. The Peninsula wasn't the kind of establishment where you could just wander around unnoticed. But she had prepared for this. She had the tools she needed. Opening her laptop, Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. The Peninsula's security system was sophisticated, but not impenetrable. She worked through backdoors and vulnerabilities, her concentration so intense that the world around her faded away. 15 minutes of focused hacking later, she was in. Camera feeds from the lobby appeared on her screen. She scrolled through them quickly, searching for Mi-sun. There. Getting into the elevator. She switched to the elevator camera, watched him press the button for the top floor. The presidential suite level. Of course. Where else would Yuna be staying? Sarah's hands were shaking as she navigated through the security system, accessing different camera feeds. Hallways. Service areas. And finally, the feed she was looking for. A camera positioned discreetly in the hallway outside the presidential suite. She watched Mi-sun approach a door at the end of the hall. He paused, straightened his jacket, the jacket with her recorder hidden in the pocket, and took a deep breath. Then he knocked. The door opened, and even through the grainy security footage, Sarah could see Yuna's face. She was smiling, radiant, wearing something silky and elegant. She said something Sarah couldn't hear, then reached out and touched Mi-sun's arm, pulling him inside. The door closed. Sarah sat frozen in her car, staring at the empty hallway on her laptop screen. He had gone in. He was in there with her right now. Doing what? Saying what? With trembling hands, Sarah pulled out her phone and opened the app connected to the voice recorder. The device was active, transmitting clearly. She plugged in her earbuds and pressed play. Yuna's voice came through first, smooth and pleased. "You came. I knew you would. I always know. Did you have any doubt?" That was Mi-sun's voice, but something about his tone was off. Too smooth. Too controlled. "With you, darling, I've learned to expect the unexpected." A rustling sound, then Yuna again. "Champagne? I have Cristal. Your favorite, if I remember correctly." "You remember correctly." The sound of glasses clinking. Sarah's vision blurred with tears, but she forced herself to keep listening. "To us," Yuna said. "To what we were. To what we're going to be again." "To the future," Mi-sun replied. More sounds. Movement. Sarah's imagination filled in what the audio couldn't capture, creating torturous images in her mind. Were they sitting close? Was he touching her? Was he? "Do you remember the night we first came up with the idea for Kong Corporation?" Yuna's voice again, nostalgic and intimate. "We were in my apartment, surrounded by business plans and empty coffee cups. You were so passionate, so determined. I knew right then that you would be extraordinary. That was a long time ago." "Not so long. Sometimes it feels like yesterday." A pause. "I've missed you, Mi-sun. Missed this. The way we could always understand each other without words. The way we fit together." Sarah's hand covered her mouth, stifling a sob. She couldn't listen to this. But she couldn't stop listening either. "We did work well together," Mi-sun said carefully. "Work?" Yuna laughed, low and suggestive. "Is that what we're calling it? I remember it being much more than work." "Yuna, don't. Don't pretend you've forgotten. Don't pretend that what we had wasn't real, wasn't powerful. You can lie to your wife, Mi-sun, but don't lie to me. Never to me." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. "Your wife," said with such dismissal, such contempt. As if Sarah were nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle between Yuna and what she wanted. "I'm not lying," Mi-sun said, and Sarah strained to hear the truth in his voice. "What we had was real, but it was also complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated now. We're both older, wiser. We know what we want." Movement sounds again. "I want you, Mi-sun. I've always wanted you. And I know you want me too. I can see it in your eyes." Sarah's breath came in short, painful gasps. She was going to be sick. She was going to. But then Mi-sun spoke again, and something in his tone made her pause. "What I want," he said slowly, "is complicated. And what you want isn't me. It's control. It's power. It's revenge for something that happened 7 years ago." A long silence. When Yuna spoke again, her voice had lost its seductive purr and turned cold. "You think you know me so well. I do know you. That's the problem. I know exactly who you are and what you're capable of. Then you know I don't make empty threats. You know that when I say I'll destroy you, I mean it. I know you'll try." Another silence, this one charged with tension that Sarah could feel even through the audio feed. Then Yuna laughed, but it sounded forced. "Enough serious talk for tonight. We have time to work out the details. Right now, I just want to be close to you, like we used to be." Her voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Stay with me tonight, Mi-sun. Let me remind you what you've been missing. Let me show you that what we have is worth fighting for." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. This was it. The moment of truth. What would he say? What would he do? "Not tonight," Mi-sun said, and Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "I told you before I want to take this slow. 7 years is a long time. We can't just pick up where we left off." "Why not?" Yuna's voice carried frustration now, the mask slipping slightly. "Because I'm not the same person I was 7 years ago. Neither are you. We need to relearn each other. Build something new, not try to resurrect something dead." "It's not dead. It's just been sleeping. Yuna. Let me touch you. Let me.
No.
The word was firm, final. Not yet. Let me take you to dinner tomorrow night. Somewhere special, somewhere meaningful. Then we'll see where things go. A long pause. Sarah held her breath, waiting. Fine, Yuna said finally, though her voice was tight with displeasure. Tomorrow night. But Mi-sun, don't make me wait too long. I'm not a patient woman. You know that. I know. Movement sounds. Footsteps. Then Mi-sun's voice, closer to the door. I should go. It's late. Stay for one more drink. Please. Tomorrow. I promise. The sound of a door opening. Closing. Then silence. Sarah pulled out her earbuds with shaking hands and switched back to the security camera feed. She watched Mi-sun walk down the hallway, his posture tense, his movements quick. He looked like a man escaping, not a man reluctantly leaving his lover. But he had been in there, with her, for over an hour, talking intimately, making plans for tomorrow night. Sarah closed her laptop and started her car, her mind spinning with everything she had heard. Mi-sun hadn't slept with Yuna tonight. He had refused her advances, had kept his distance. That should make Sarah feel better. But it didn't. Because he was still lying. Still playing games. Still keeping secrets. And tomorrow night, he would go back to her. Unless Sarah did something to stop it. Sarah drove home on autopilot, her mind replaying the conversation she had just overheard. Mi-sun's voice, careful and controlled. Yuna's voice, seductive and demanding. The dance they were doing around each other, full of history and unspoken meanings that Sarah couldn't fully decipher. She arrived at their building and parked, but she couldn't make herself go inside. Not yet. She couldn't face lying in their bed, pretending to be asleep when Mi-sun came home, pretending she didn't know where he had been and who he had been with. Instead, Sarah pulled out her laptop again and started searching. If Mi-sun had secrets, she would find them. If there were answers to be discovered about who he really was and what he was capable of, she would discover them. She started with basic searches. Kang Mi-sun business history. Kang Corporation founding. Seoul business leaders. The results were mostly puff pieces from business magazines, articles celebrating his success, interviews where he talked about innovation and market strategy. Nothing useful. Nothing real. Then Sarah started digging deeper, using search terms that most people wouldn't think of. Seoul Organized Crime 2018. Gang activity before Kang Corporation. Mysterious business leader emergence. The results were sparse, but they were there. Archived news articles from 7 years ago about gang violence in certain districts of Seoul. Stories about territorial disputes. Mentions of a young boss who had consolidated power quickly and ruthlessly before vanishing from the criminal world entirely. Sarah's stomach turned as she read. The timeline matched perfectly. Right before Mi-sun had founded Kang Corporation, there had been a surge of organized crime activity, followed by a sudden calm. As if someone had taken control and then simply walked away. But that was insane. Mi-sun was a businessman, not a criminal. He was educated, sophisticated, connected to legitimate power structures. He couldn't possibly have been involved in that world. Could he? Sarah clicked on another article, this one about unexplained disappearances of known gang members. 3 men had vanished within a 2-week period. No bodies were ever found. The police had investigated but found nothing. The cases went cold. 2 weeks before Mi-sun registered Kang Corporation as a legal entity. Sarah's hands were shaking again. She was seeing connections that might not exist, building conspiracy theories out of coincidence and fear. But her instincts, honed by years of survival, were screaming that she was onto something real. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mi-sun. On my way home. About 15 minutes out. Are you still awake? Sarah typed back quickly. No. Went to bed early. Migraine. See you in the morning. She couldn't face him tonight. couldn't look into his eyes and pretend everything was normal when her entire worldview was shattering. She needed time to process, to think, to figure out what to do with all this information she was uncovering. Sarah closed her laptop and made a decision. She couldn't go home. Not tonight. She needed space, distance, clarity. She pulled out of the parking garage and drove across the city to a small, unremarkable hotel in a neighborhood where no one would think to look for her. She paid cash for the room, using a false name, and carried her laptop and overnight bag up to the 3rd floor. The room was basic but clean. Sarah locked the door behind her and sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself to fall apart. The tears came in waves, shaking her entire body, all the fear and hurt and confusion pouring out in racking sobs. She cried for the marriage she thought she had, for the man she thought she knew, for the future she had been building in her mind, all the plans and dreams that now seemed like foolish fantasies. When the tears finally stopped, Sarah felt hollow and exhausted. But beneath the exhaustion was something harder, stronger. Determination. She wasn't going to be a victim in this situation. She wasn't going to passively wait for the truth to be revealed or for Mi-sun to decide what to tell her. She was going to find out everything herself. And then she would decide what to do with that knowledge. Sarah opened her laptop again and composed a text message to Mi-sun. I know everything. Don't come looking for me. I need time to think. She stared at the message for a long moment, her finger hovering over the send button. This would change everything. Once she sent this, there would be no going back, no pretending, no more comfortable lies. But as her finger moved toward the send button, Sarah hesitated. If she sent this, Mi-sun would know she was onto him. He would know she had been investigating, following him, listening to his conversations. He would have time to prepare, to come up with explanations, to build new lies. No. She needed more information. First, she needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before she confronted him. Knowledge was power, and right now, she needed all the power she could get. Sarah pressed delete, watching the message disappear character by character until the text field was empty again. She wouldn't tell him. Not yet. She would watch, listen, and learn. She would become invisible, a ghost in her own marriage, observing everything while revealing nothing. An hour passed, then another. Around 11 o'clock, she heard the sound of a key in the front door lock. Mi-sun was home. Sarah remained motionless, every muscle in her body tense as she listened to him move through the apartment. His footsteps were heavy, tired. She heard him pause in the living room, heard the sound of him setting down his keys. Then his footsteps approached the bedroom. The door opened quietly. Sarah kept her breathing slow and even, mimicking sleep. Through her barely open eyelids, she could see Mi-sun's silhouette in the doorway. He stood there for a long moment, just watching her. Finally, Mi-sun moved away. The door closed softly, and Sarah heard him go into his home office. The door clicked shut, and then she heard his voice again through the earbuds. "We have a problem," Mi-sun said, his tone completely different from the voice he used with her. This was cold, authoritative, dangerous. "I just got word that Yuna's brother is on the move. He's left Busan and is heading to Seoul. ETA 2 hours. Sarah's heart began to pound. Yuna's brother? Is he coming to complete the job? Mi-sun asked after a pause. Job? What job? And your men? Are they in position? Men. He had men working for him. Sarah's hands were shaking. I don't have a choice, Mi-sun said, his voice heavy. There was a longer pause. Then the other person spoke, their voice faint but audible. There's always a choice. The question is whether you can live with the consequences. The call ended. Sarah heard Mi-sun moving around his office, drawers opening, papers rustling. Then silence for several minutes before she heard him leave the office and head to the bathroom. The shower turned on. Sarah seized the opportunity. She slipped out of bed, grabbed her laptop, and crept to the bedroom door. She could hear the water running. Moving quickly, she went to Mi-sun's office and carefully opened the door. His burner phone was on the desk. Sarah picked it up, scrolling through recent messages. Her hands trembled as she read. Target arriving 1 a.m. Men ready. Awaiting final confirmation. 100 million transferred. Subject signed agreement. No backing out now. Hotel security bypassed. Clear path to suite. Sarah's stomach churned. She took photos of every message with her own phone, then put the burner back exactly where she found it. She returned to the bedroom just as the shower turned off. Minutes later, Mi-sun entered the bedroom. He climbed into bed beside her, careful not to disturb her supposed sleep. But Sarah could feel the tension radiating from his body. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, not sleeping. Neither of them slept that night. The next morning arrived with brutal efficiency. Sarah heard Mi-sun's alarm go off at 6 a.m. She kept her eyes closed, her breathing steady, as he got out of bed and moved around the room. She heard him dressing, heard the rustle of fabric as he put on that same jacket with the recorder still hidden in the pocket. He paused beside the bed. Sarah felt his gaze on her face, felt him lean down. His lips brushed her forehead in a gentle kiss that made her want to scream. Then he was gone. Sarah waited until she heard the front door close before she opened her eyes. She didn't waste time. She showered quickly, dressed in dark, practical clothes, packed her laptop, and prepared to follow him. But Mi-sun wasn't going to the office. Through the voice recorder, Sarah heard him making a call. I'm heading to Busan now, Mi-sun said. Have the address ready. I want to make contact before noon.
Busan.
Sarah's heart raced. He was going after Yuna's brother directly. She grabbed her car keys and left the apartment 15 minutes after Mi-sun. The drive to Busan would take at least 3 hours. Sarah stayed far enough back that he wouldn't notice her car, but close enough that she could track him through traffic. During the drive, she listened through her earbuds as Mi-sun made another call. Ghost, I'm on my way. You have eyes on the target. Affirmative. Min-ho is at his usual corner in the Nampo-dong district. He's been there since 10 a.m. Light traffic today, mostly regulars.
Good.
I'll be there in 40 minutes. Make sure your cameras are recording everything. I need evidence that puts my fingerprints all over his product. Boss, are you sure about this? Once you make contact, there's no going back. I'm sure. This ends today. The call disconnected. Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She was about to witness her husband doing something illegal, something that would confirm everything she feared about who he really was. When they reached Busan, Sarah parked 3 blocks away from the location Ghost had mentioned. She pulled up city surveillance cameras on her laptop and found the corner where Choi Min-ho operated. The man was in his late 20s, thin and nervous-looking, constantly scanning the street. He wore a dirty jacket and jeans, looking every bit the street-level dealer trying to survive another day. Sarah watched through the camera feed as Mi-sun approached. He had changed clothes somewhere along the way. Gone was the expensive suit. Now he wore faded jeans, a worn jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low. He looked like any other user looking for a fix. You got what I need? Mi-sun's voice came through the recorder, slightly muffled but clear enough. Depends what you're looking for. Min-ho's voice was wary, cautious. Crystal. 0.5 gram to start. There was shuffling, the sound of a transaction. Sarah watched on the camera feed as money changed hands, as Min-ho pulled out a small bag from his jacket. First time I've seen you around here, Min-ho said. I'm from Seoul. Business in the area. Mi-sun handled the bag, examining it, his fingerprints getting all over the plastic. This is good quality. You have a reliable supplier?
The best.
Why, you looking for more? Maybe. I have friends back in Seoul. Big buyers. We're always looking for new sources, especially if the quality is consistent. Sarah could hear the change in Min-ho's tone, the interest sparking. How big are we talking? Big enough to make you 10 times what you're making on this corner. Mi-sun paused deliberately. But that's a conversation for people who are serious. People who can handle real weight, real money. I can handle it, Min-ho said quickly, too quickly. The desperation was obvious, even through the audio. Can you? Mi-sun's tone was skeptical. Because the people I work with don't mess around. They need reliability, discretion, and someone who can move significant product without drawing attention. You look like you're barely holding it together, friend. I said I can handle it. Min-ho's voice turned defensive, aggressive. I've been in this game for 5 years. I know what I'm doing. 5 years on a street corner is different from moving real weight. But I tell you what. Mi-sun paused, and Sarah could picture him pretending to consider, manipulating the conversation exactly where he wanted it to go. I'm staying in the city for a couple days. Business meetings. If you're serious, meet me tonight. The Riverside Hotel, 9 p.m. We'll talk numbers, see if you're really ready for this kind of opportunity. Tonight?
I don't know, man.
I don't usually. Tonight, or I find someone else. Busan is full of people who'd kill for this kind of connection. Mi-sun's voice was cold, final. Your choice. Sarah watched through the camera feed as Mi-sun handed Min-ho a card with a number on it. Then he walked away, leaving the young man standing on the corner, staring at the card in his hand. Through the recorder, Sarah heard Mi-sun get back into his car. Another phone call. It's done.
He'll be there tonight.
Make sure the room is set up exactly as we discussed. Documents ready, contracts prepared, everything legal looking. And Ghost, make sure your cameras catch every angle. I need undeniable evidence. Already arranged. The room is booked under a shell company. Everything will look legitimate until we spring the trap. Good. I'm heading back to Seoul now. I'll meet you at the safe house at 7 to review the final plan. The call ended. Sarah sat in her car, processing what she had just witnessed. Mi-sun had just purchased drugs, deliberately contaminating them with his fingerprints to frame Min-ho further. He had dangled an opportunity so tempting that a desperate dealer couldn't refuse. And tonight, he would close the trap. Sarah started her car and began the drive back to Seoul, staying far behind Mi-sun's vehicle. Her mind raced with the implications. By tonight, Yuna's brother would be signing his own death warrant, manipulated by a man he thought was offering him a way out of poverty. And Mi-sun was orchestrating all of it with cold precision, like a chess master moving pieces on a board. The drive back to Seoul felt endless. Sarah arrived at their apartment an hour after Mi-sun, making sure to time it so he wouldn't question where she had been. She found him in the living room, reviewing documents on his laptop, looking every bit the legitimate businessman. Hey, he said, smiling when she walked in. Feeling better today? You were sleeping so deeply this morning, I didn't want to wake you. The lie came so easily to him. Sarah forced a smile in return. Much better. The rest helped. Where were you? I tried calling, but your phone was off. Early morning meeting with investors. You know how it is. They wanted to meet at some ungodly hour. Another lie, smooth as silk. I thought I'd work from home this afternoon. Spend some time with you. Actually, I have some errands to run, Sarah said quickly. Wedding gift shopping for Jennifer. Her anniversary is coming up. I'll be back this evening. She saw something flicker in his eyes. Relief? He wanted her out of the apartment, away from whatever was about to happen tonight. Of course. Take your time. I'll probably have to step out for a late meeting anyway. Investor dinner. He stood and kissed her cheek. Love you. Love you too, Sarah replied automatically, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. She left the apartment again, but she didn't go shopping. Instead, she drove to a coffee shop with strong Wi-Fi and set up her laptop. She had work to do. First, she pulled up all the surveillance footage she had collected. The drug transaction in Busan. The conversations between Mi-sun and Ghost. The messages on the burner phone. She saved everything to multiple encrypted drives, making sure the evidence couldn't be lost. Then she started researching Choi Min-ho more deeply. His history, his arrests, his connection to Yuna. What she found made her stomach turn. Min-ho had been arrested 3 times for drug possession, but never for dealing. Each time, someone had bailed him out. Someone with money and connections. Yuna, his older sister, had saved him repeatedly, even though he kept falling back into the same patterns. He was an addict himself, Sarah realized. Not just a dealer, but someone struggling with his own demons, trying to survive the only way he knew how. And Mi-sun was using that desperation, that vulnerability, as a weapon against Yuna. Sarah checked the time. 4 p.m. In 5 hours, Min-ho would arrive at the Riverside Hotel, thinking he was about to change his life. Instead, he would be signing a contract to murder his own sister. She pulled up the hacked security feeds from the Peninsula Hotel where Yuna was staying. The woman was in her suite, working on a laptop, completely unaware that her brother was being weaponized against her. Sarah's fingers hovered over her keyboard. She could send an anonymous message to Yuna, warn her. She could call the police, report the drug transaction she had witnessed. She could do 100 things to stop what was about to happen. But she didn't. Not yet. Because she needed to understand something first. She needed to see exactly how far Mi-sun would go. Needed to know if the man she loved was still in there somewhere, or if he had been completely consumed by the monster he used to be. At 7 p.m., Sarah tracked Mi-sun's location through the voice recorder. He had left their apartment and was heading east, toward the warehouse district. The same place he had met ghosts that morning. Through her earbuds, Sarah heard him enter the warehouse. "Everything ready?" Mi-sun asked. "All set. The hotel room is prepared." Min-ho confirmed he's coming. He's eager, desperate. He'll sign anything. That was Ghost's voice. "Show me the documents." There was rustling of papers. Ghost began explaining. "This is the employment contract. Looks legitimate: security consultation, high-risk protection services, all the legal terminology. Payment schedule, confidentiality clauses, everything a real contract would have. And the target revelation? Page 7, hidden in the legal language. Once he signs, we have documentation that he agreed to the job. Then we show him the real terms, the target photo, the payment structure, everything. By then, he's already committed on paper. And the evidence against him? The drugs you bought today have been logged into evidence storage. We have the transaction on video. His fingerprints are all over it. The moment this is done, we can turn everything over to the authorities. He's looking at 20 to life. What about the gun? Untraceable. We'll provide it tonight. If he actually uses it, we have ballistics. If he doesn't, we still have his fingerprints on it and the signed contract showing intent." Mi-sun was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. "And if he refuses? If he tries to back out? Then we show him the drug evidence and give him a choice, prison or the job. He won't refuse. He can't afford to." "What time does he arrive?" 9 p.m. "You'll present the opportunity. I'll handle the technical details. We should have everything wrapped up by 10 at the latest." Sarah listened, her heart pounding. This was it. This was the moment when Mi-sun would fully cross the line from businessman to criminal, from husband to monster. At 8:30 p.m., Sarah drove to the Riverside Hotel. She parked where she could see the entrance and pulled up the hacked security feeds on her laptop. She had access to the cameras in the lobby, the elevators, and most importantly, the hallway outside room 347. At 8:50 p.m., she watched Mi-sun and Ghost enter the hotel through a side entrance, avoiding the main lobby cameras. They went straight to the 3rd floor, to room 347. Through the voice recorder, Sarah heard them doing final preparations. "Test the cameras," Mi-sun ordered. All 4 angles working perfectly. Audio is crystal clear. The contract. On the table, pen beside it. Looks completely professional. The gun. In the briefcase. We'll present it after he signs. At 9 p.m. exactly, Sarah's laptop showed a nervous young man entering the hotel lobby. Choi Min-ho looked even worse than he had that morning. His hands were shaking, his eyes darting around. He was clearly high, probably trying to steady his nerves. He approached the front desk, spoke to the clerk, and was directed to the elevators. Sarah switched camera feeds, watching him ride up to the third floor. He walked down the hallway, checking room numbers, until he reached 347. He knocked. The door opened, and Mi-sun appeared, all smiles and false warmth. "Mr. Choi, right on time. Please come in. Can I offer you a drink?" "Just water," Min-ho said, his voice shaky. Sarah switched to the hidden camera feed that Mi-sun's team had set up inside the room. She could now see everything. Mi-sun gesturing to a chair, Ghost standing near the window pretending to be security, the contract laid out on the table like a trap waiting to spring. "So," Mi-sun began, sitting across from Min-ho. "Let's talk about this opportunity. How would you like to make $200 million? Min-ho's eyes went wide. $200 million? For what? A specialized security job. Very high risk, which is why the payment is so substantial. But it requires absolute discretion and commitment." Mi-sun slid the contract across the table. "This is a standard employment agreement. Confidentiality is paramount. You'll need to sign before we can discuss the specific details."
I don't know, man.
This seems. Mr. Choi, opportunities like this don't come along every day. Especially not for someone in your current situation. Mi-sun's tone hardened slightly. "I'm offering you a chance to change your life. To never have to stand on that corner again. To have real money, real security. All you have to do is sign the paper and hear me out. If you don't like what I'm offering, you can walk away."
No harm, no foul.
But that was a lie Sarah knew. Once Min-ho signed that contract, he wouldn't be allowed to walk away. They would own him. Min-ho stared at the contract, his hand trembling as he picked up the pen. Sarah could see the war playing out on his face. Desperation versus caution. Hope versus fear. Desperation won. He signed his name at the bottom of the contract. Mi-sun smiled, and it was the coldest smile Sarah had ever seen. "Excellent choice, Mr. Choi. Now let me tell you about the job. Ghost, if you would." Ghost opened a briefcase and pulled out a folder. Inside was a photograph. "Your target," Mi-sun said calmly, "is Choi Yuna, your sister." Min-ho's face went white. He stood up so fast his chair toppled backward.
What?
"Are you insane? That's my sister." "Sit down, Mr. Choi," Mi-sun said, his voice cold and commanding. "You've already signed the contract. You're committed now." "I'm not killing my sister. I don't care what I signed." Min-ho moved toward the door, but Ghost stepped in front of it, blocking his exit. "I said sit down." Mi-sun's voice dropped to a dangerous level that Sarah had never heard before. This wasn't her husband. This was someone else entirely. You need to understand your situation before you make any rash decisions. "Get out of my way." Min-ho tried to push past Ghost, but the larger man didn't budge. Mi-sun nodded to Ghost, who pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Min-ho. "Look at the screen, Mr. Choi. Look carefully." Min-ho's eyes moved to the tablet, and Sarah watched his face crumble. On the screen were photos from this morning, Min-ho selling drugs to Mi-sun. Video footage of the transaction. Close-ups of his fingerprints all over the bags of crystal meth. "We have enough evidence here to put you away for 20 years minimum," Mi-sun said calmly. "Drug dealing, multiple transactions, fingerprints on enough product to qualify for trafficking charges. The police would be very interested in this information. You set me up." Min-ho's voice was barely a whisper. "I gave you an opportunity. You chose to take it. Just like you're choosing now." Mi-sun stood and walked to the window, his back to Min-ho. "Here are your options, Mr. Choi. Option 1. You complete the job. You eliminate your sister. You receive $100 million immediately, with another $100 million upon completion. You disappear, start a new life somewhere far from here, and never look back." "I won't do it." Option 2. Mi-sun continued as if Min-ho hadn't spoken. "You refuse the job. We turn this evidence over to the police. You spend the next 20 years in prison. Your sister will know you were dealing drugs again despite all her efforts to save you. She'll be disappointed, but not surprised. And when you finally get out, you'll be a middle-aged man with a criminal record and no prospects. You can't make me kill my own sister. Mi-sun turned back to face him. I'm not making you do anything. I'm simply presenting your choices. You can go to prison, or you can take the money and run. What happens to your sister is unfortunate, but it's a consequence of your own decisions. If you hadn't been dealing drugs, if you hadn't been desperate for money, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Yuna has always protected me, always bailed me out. I can't. Your sister, Mi-sun interrupted, owns 42% of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. She lives in luxury while you sell drugs on street corners. She could have set you up with a legitimate job, gotten you into rehab, given you a real chance. Instead, she throws money at the problem and walks away. She's not the saint you think she is, Mr. Choi. The manipulation was masterful, Sarah realized with horror. Mi-sun was twisting Minho's obvious guilt and resentment, using his addiction and desperation against him. I need time to think, Minho said, but his voice had lost its conviction. You have until tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. Mi-sun gestured to Ghost, who pulled a gun from the briefcase and set it on the table. This is untraceable. Your sister stays at the Peninsula Hotel, Presidential Suite. Security lets family members through without extensive screening. You know her schedule, her habits. It should be simple. And if I go to the police? If I tell them what you're doing? With what evidence? You signed a legitimate employment contract. Everything in this room is perfectly legal. Meanwhile, we have video of you dealing drugs. Who do you think they'll believe? A respected businessman or a drug addict with a criminal record? Mi-sun moved toward the door. Ghost will contact you tomorrow morning at 5 a.m.
You'll tell him your decision then.
Choose wisely, Mr. Choi. Your sister's life and your freedom both hang in the balance. Mi-sun and Ghost left the room. Minho stood there alone, staring at the gun on the table, his entire body shaking. Sarah watched through the camera feed as the young man sank to his knees and started to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. He was trapped, and he knew it. Trapped by his own desperation, his own mistakes, and Mi-sun's ruthless manipulation. Sarah switched to the hallway camera and watched Mi-sun and Ghost walk to the elevator. He'll do it, Ghost said. He's desperate enough. Addicted enough. Resentful enough. Maybe. But prepare a backup plan, just in case. I want people watching the hotel starting at midnight. If he decides to go to Yuna to confess or warn her, we need to know immediately. And if he does, then we move to Plan B, anonymous tip to the police about his drug activities. Either way, by tomorrow afternoon, Yuna's leverage is gone. They entered the elevator, and the doors closed. Sarah sat in her car, trembling with rage and horror and something else she couldn't name. She had just watched her husband coerce a drug addict into potentially murdering his own sister. Had watched him manipulate and threaten with the casual cruelty of someone who had done this before. This was who Mi-sun really was. Not the charming businessman who brought her soup when she was sick. Not the loving husband who kissed her forehead in the morning. This was the mafia boss he had been 7 years ago, the man who had controlled the Seoul underworld through fear and violence. That man had never really gone away. He had just been hiding, waiting for a reason to resurface. Sarah checked the time. 9:45 p.m. She had hours before Minho would make his decision. Hours to decide what she was going to do with the knowledge she had gained. She could go to the police right now. Show them everything she had recorded. The drug transaction, the coercion, the murder-for-hire scheme. Mi-sun would be arrested. His carefully constructed legitimate life would crumble. Kang Corporation would be destroyed by the scandal. But would they even believe her? Mi-sun had been careful. The evidence could be explained away, dismissed as a misunderstanding or fabrication. And he had connections, money, power. He might walk away while she was left with nothing. Or she could warn Yuna. Call the hotel. Tell her what was coming. Let her prepare or escape. But Yuna was no innocent victim. She had been blackmailing Mi-sun, threatening to destroy their marriage, using her past with him as a weapon. Did she deserve to die for that?
No.
But did she deserve Sarah's protection? That was less clear. Or Sarah could do nothing. Let Min-ho make his choice. Let nature take its course. If he killed Yuna, Mi-sun would be free of her threats. If Yuna killed Min-ho in self-defense, Mi-sun would get what he wanted anyway. Either way, the problem would be solved. But at what cost? What would it say about Sarah if she stood by and let this happen? If she knew murder was about to occur and did nothing to stop it? Sarah's phone, still without its battery, sat on the seat beside her. She picked it up, held it in her hand, felt its weight. She could insert the battery right now. She could make the call that would stop all of this. But she didn't. Not yet. Instead, she started her car and drove to the Peninsula Hotel. She parked in the public garage and opened her laptop again. The security feeds showed Yuna in her suite, unaware and vulnerable. For security guards rotated positions in the hallway, professionals doing their job, not knowing that the real threat would come from someone they'd let pass without question. Yuna's brother. Her family. The one person she had consistently protected despite his failures and flaws. Sarah watched Yuna through the camera, watched her work on her laptop, make phone calls, live her life in complete ignorance of what was coming. And Sarah realized something that made her sick to her stomach. She was angry at Yuna. Furiously, bitterly angry. Angry at the photos she had shown Sarah, the poison she had dripped into their marriage, the manipulation and threats. Part of Sarah, a dark, vengeful part she didn't want to acknowledge, wanted Yuna to suffer. Wanted her to face consequences for trying to destroy Sarah's marriage. But wanting someone to suffer and being willing to let them be murdered were two very different things. Sarah closed her laptop and leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes. She thought about Mi-sun, about the man she had fallen in love with. The man who had saved her nephew's life, who had stood up to his own family to protect her, who had made her feel safe and valued for the first time in years. Was that man real? Or had he always been a carefully constructed illusion, a mask worn by someone much darker and more dangerous? And if that man was real, if there was still good in Mi-sun beneath all the darkness, could Sarah save him from himself? Or was it already too late? Her phone buzzed, or would have if the battery had been inserted. But through her laptop, connected to the voice recorder app, she heard a notification sound. Mi-sun's phone, receiving a message. Sarah pulled up the audio feed and listened. It's Ghost. Min-ho is on the move. He just left the hotel. He's heading south. Should I follow? Mi-sun's voice. Yes. And get me his location every 5 minutes. I want to know if he goes home, if he goes to Yuna, if he goes anywhere unexpected. Copy that. So it was happening. Min-ho had made his choice, or was in the process of making it. And Mi-sun was monitoring every step, ready to react to whatever decision the desperate young man made. Sarah looked at her phone battery again. She had minutes, maybe less, to decide what kind of person she was going to be. Sarah sat in the parking garage for another 10 minutes, her mind racing through scenarios and consequences. Finally, she made her decision. She wasn't going to call the police. She wasn't going to warn Yuna. But she wasn't going to do nothing either. She was going to watch. She was going to document everything. And when it was over, she would decide what to do with the truth she had uncovered. Sarah pulled her laptop onto her lap and opened multiple windows, security feeds from the peninsula, traffic cameras tracking Min-ho's movements, and the voice recorder app still transmitting from Mi-sun's jacket. She was going to see this through to the end, whatever that end might be. Through the traffic cameras, she tracked Min-ho's car moving through Seoul's late-night streets. He wasn't going home. He wasn't going to the police station. He was circling, driving aimlessly, clearly trying to make a decision that would determine not just his fate, but his sister's life. Sarah's phone showed it was almost 11 p.m. Through the voice recorder, she heard Mi-sun receiving updates from Ghost. Target is still moving. Currently on Gangnam Boulevard. No clear destination yet. Keep following. And remind me, do we have eyes inside Yuna's suite? Negative. Just hallway cameras. But we can track anyone who enters or exits. Good enough. What time do the security guards change shifts? Midnight. New team comes on. We've confirmed Min-ho is on the approved family list. They'll let him through without question. Mi-sun was quiet for a moment. And if he goes through with it? If he actually kills her? Then we have 3 witnesses outside who heard a gunshot but couldn't stop what happened inside. We're the ones who called the police. We tried to save her. You become the grieving friend who lost a business partner. The evidence against Min-ho is overwhelming. Sign contract. The gun with his prints, his known drug problems. Open and shut case. And if she kills him instead? Even cleaner. Self-defense is obvious. She'll be traumatized, vulnerable. You comfort her. Her leverage is gone. Her brother is dead, and she has no one left to protect. She'll sign over whatever you want just to have someone in her corner. Sarah's stomach turned. Mi-sun had engineered a situation where he won no matter what happened. Someone was going to die tonight, and he had arranged it so he would benefit either way. At 11:30, Min-ho's car finally stopped. Sarah tracked his location. He had parked 2 blocks from the peninsula. Through the voice recorder, she heard Ghost's update. He's on foot now, heading toward the hotel. Boss, I think he's made his decision. Stay back. Don't interfere. Let it play out naturally. Understood. Sarah switched to the peninsula's security cameras. She saw Min-ho approaching the hotel entrance, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. His face was pale, his movements jerky and uncertain. He paused outside the entrance, looking up at the building, his lips moving as if he was talking to himself or praying. Then he took a deep breath and walked inside. Sarah's heart pounded as she watched him cross the lobby. The night clerk looked up, recognized him from previous visits, and nodded politely. Min-ho approached the desk. I'm here to see my sister. Choi Yuna. Présidentielle suite. His voice was shaky, but audible through the lobby's audio system that Sarah had hacked into. Of course, Mr. Choi. She's expecting you. It's family business. She'll want to see me. The clerk hesitated, then picked up the phone. After a brief conversation, he nodded. You can go up. She says to come straight to her suite. Min-ho walked to the elevator. Sarah switched camera feeds, following his progress. He rode up alone, his reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls showing a man on the edge of collapse. His hands were shaking violently. He kept touching his jacket pocket where Sarah assumed the gun was hidden. The elevator doors opened on the presidential floor. The 2 security guards on duty straightened when they saw him. Mr. Choi, one of them said, your sister is expecting you. Suite 1847. They didn't search him, didn't ask questions. He was family, approved, trusted. Min-ho walked down the hallway with the gait of a man walking to his execution, or about to commit one. He stopped outside Suite 1847 and raised his hand to knock. His hand hovered there for several seconds before finally making contact with the door. Through the voice recorder, Sarah heard Ghost's update to Mi-sun. He's inside the building, about to enter her suite. All teams are in position. Good. Record everything. I want documentation of every second. The suite door opened. Yuna appeared, wearing an elegant silk robe, her hair loose around her shoulders. Even through the grainy hallway camera, Sarah could see the concern on her face when she saw her brother's condition.
Min-ho?
What's wrong? You look terrible.
Come in.
She pulled him inside, and the door closed. Sarah quickly switched to her audio monitoring, increasing the volume. The hallway cameras couldn't show what was happening inside, but if she was lucky, the audio might pick up something through the door. For several minutes, There was muffled conversation. Sarah couldn't make out words, just the rise and fall of voices. Yuna's concerned tone.
Minho zagitatet responses.
Then suddenly, clearly, Minho's voice rang out. I'm so sorry, Yuna. I'm so sorry for everything. For being such a burden. For always needing you to save me. Sarah's hands gripped the laptop. This was it. The moment. Minho, what are you talking about? You're scaring me. Yuna's voice was sharp with concern. I came to say goodbye. To tell you I love you. That I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, even though I never deserved it. Goodbye? Where are you going? Minho, talk to me. There was a sound of movement, something scraping across the floor. Then Yuna's voice, suddenly alarmed. What is that? Minho, why do you have a gun? Put it down. Put it down right now. I can't. I have to do this. They'll kill me if I don't. They'll. Who will kill you? Who gave you that gun? Minho, tell me what's happening. I can't tell you. If I tell you, they'll know. They're watching. They're always watching. I just have to. I'm sorry, Yuna. I'm so sorry. A gunshot cracked through the audio feed, but it sounded wrong, muffled, like it had gone into fabric or furniture rather than flesh. Then came sounds of a struggle. Yuna's voice, no longer concerned but commanding, dangerous. Drop it. Drop the gun now. Minho was shouting incoherently, words tumbling over each other. I can't, they said. The money, prison, I have to. Another gunshot, this one clearly hitting the wall or ceiling based on the sound. On the security feed, Sarah saw the hallway guards react, drawing their weapons and moving toward the suite. Inside, the sounds of struggle intensified. Furniture crashing. Glass breaking. Yuna's voice cutting through the chaos. Stop. Minho, stop fighting me. But Minho seemed beyond reason, beyond control. Through the audio, Sarah could hear his desperate, animal-like sounds. He was completely panicked, driven by fear and desperation and whatever drugs were in his system. I have to do this. I have to. His voice was a scream. Then came a different sound. A sharp impact. A sickening crack. Then silence. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. The suite door burst open. The security guards rushed in, weapons raised. Sarah switched between camera angles frantically, trying to see what had happened. Through the open doorway, she could see Yuna standing in the center of the suite, her chest heaving, her robe torn at the shoulder. Her hands were still raised in a defensive karate stance, the stance of someone who had just executed a move. On the floor at her feet lay Minho, his body at an unnatural angle, completely still. The gun was several feet away, having slid across the polished floor during the struggle. He attacked me, Yuna said, her voice shaking for the first time. He had a gun. He was trying to. I didn't mean to. I just reacted. My training just. One of the guards knelt beside Minho, checking for a pulse. His face went grim. He looked up at his partner and shook his head slowly. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. Minho was dead. Yuna had killed her own brother. Through the voice recorder, Sarah heard Ghost's stunned whisper to Mi-sun. Jesus Christ. She killed him. Her own brother. That karate move. She snapped his neck like it was nothing. Mi-sun's response was quiet, almost too quiet to hear. Make sure our teams pull back. This is self-defense, clear-cut. We were never here. Understood. Understood. Within minutes, the hotel was swarming with police. Sarah watched through the security feeds as detectives arrived, as crime scene technicians began documenting everything, as Yuna was led away in handcuffs, not arrested yet, but detained for questioning. The woman's face was blank, emotionless, in shock. She had just killed her own brother, the person she had protected and bailed out countless times. The one family member she had cared about. Sarah watched as they brought out Minho's body in a black bag. She watched as detectives examined the gun, the bullet holes in the wall and ceiling, the overturned furniture that told the story of a violent struggle. She watched as they found the contract in Min-ho's jacket pocket, the employment agreement he had signed. They would trace it back eventually, but Mi-sun had been careful. The shell company, the layers of legal protection, it would all lead nowhere. And she watched as Yuna was put into the back of a police car, her head down, her hands cuffed, her entire world shattered in a single moment of defensive instinct. Sarah closed her laptop slowly, her hands trembling. She sat in her car in the dark parking garage, and finally, the dam broke. Tears streamed down her face, hot and unstoppable. She cried for Min-ho, a desperate addict manipulated into attacking his own sister. She cried for Yuna, who had killed the one person she loved most in the world. She cried for herself, for the marriage she thought she had, for the man she thought she knew. But most of all, she cried because she understood now, truly understood, what Mi-sun was capable of. He had engineered this entire tragedy, had manipulated events so perfectly that someone would die and he would benefit, all while keeping his hands completely clean. He had turned a brother against a sister, had weaponized desperation and addiction and family bonds, had set up a situation where the only possible outcomes were exactly what he wanted. This was who her husband really was. Not a reformed criminal trying to go straight. Not a businessman who had left his dark past behind. He was still that mafia boss, still that calculating strategist who moved people like chess pieces and accepted their deaths as collateral damage. Sarah wiped her eyes and started her car. The voice recorder was still active in Mi-sun's jacket. Through her earbuds, she heard him speaking to Ghost. Cleanup complete?
Yes.
All our people are clear. No trace of our involvement. The hotel security footage shows Min-ho entering alone, agitated, clearly unstable. The gun is untraceable. The contract will lead nowhere. And Yuna just killed her own brother in self-defense. It's perfect. Nothing about this is perfect, Mi-sun said, and Sarah heard genuine emotion in his voice for the first time that night. A man is dead. A broken, desperate man who should have gotten help, not manipulation. Since when do you care about casualties, boss? I'm not the boss anymore. And I do care. I care about my wife more. About protecting what we have. But the cost, his voice broke slightly. The cost keeps getting higher. You did what you had to do. Yuna's neutralized. She'll be dealing with legal troubles and grief for months. She won't have time or energy to threaten your marriage. Mission accomplished. Get out of here, Ghost. And don't contact me again unless it's an emergency. I'm done with this world. I'm done with all of it. We both know that's not true. Once you're in, you're never really out. Just go. Sarah drove home through empty streets, her mind numb, her heart broken. When she arrived at their apartment, she saw Mi-sun's car already in its spot. He was home, probably trying to act normal, to pretend this was just another night. She sat in her car for a long time, staring at the building, trying to decide what to do next. She had evidence of everything, the recordings, the videos, the messages. She could destroy Mi-sun with what she knew. But did she want to? Did she want to watch her husband go to prison, to see Kang Corporation collapse, to lose everything they had built together? Or could she live with this knowledge? Could she wake up every day next to a man who was capable of such calculated cruelty? Could she pretend she didn't know what he had done? If you've made it this far in Mi-sun and Sarah's story, thank you for watching. This journey into the dark side of their marriage is only beginning. What will Sarah do with the knowledge she's gained? Can their marriage survive these revelations? And what will be the consequences of Yuna's arrest for killing? Share your thoughts in the comment section. What should Sarah do now that she knows the truth?